All right, you guys. So I definitely want to spend some time with you all today on just some thoughts and updates and things like that from Hawaii. And it got me also thinking about some updates that aren't necessarily new from Hawaii, but I just haven't really covered in depth with you guys that I want to do. So that's going to take up a pretty good chunk of our training today. And then depending on time, I do want to get into a bit of FMAX just to kind of break the seal on that. And then we'll dig much deeper into it next week and probably for a few weeks. So we'll camp out there and get you guys familiar with that platform. But I think what's more important here is talking about some big picture stuff, and just a couple things. So obviously I could spend an hour talking about how amazing our trip was, but I don't think you guys want to hear that. You can check Facebook for a lot of those pictures and all of that. But I will make some comments about that trip in a second. But some really important things I want to share with you. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse when you go to Hawaii on the company trip. The from a business operation standpoint. So the blessing is everybody's there. I mean, everybody that's important in our home office is there. Every department head, president, vice president, you name it, they're all there. You're all at the same hotel. And so you've got access to everyone. But the curse is that so does everybody else. And so there's like 250 people. So it's 500 qualifiers, roughly 250 per wave. And so you got 250 people out there that all want to hunt down these people. They all have their agendas or want to get a photo op or whatever. Hey, come say something to my team. And so you'll find yourself having a conversation with like our president. And then all of a sudden, like 2 minutes later, like somebody comes and grabs them and, hey, can you take a picture with me? And it's just so it can be a little convoluted. But deeper discussions definitely happen in some side conversations at dinners and things like that. And so I spent time with everybody I wanted to spend time with out there. And a couple things I want to tell you guys that maybe an impression I didn't have before I went out there. So one I did have, one I didn't have. What I did have is this company is staffing up like I've never seen. I've been here for 25 years, and I've just never. I swear, every month I'm meeting either virtually or a few people in Hawaii, brand new people that are in positions that have never existed before. And I kind of joked. I'm like, at one point, I thought TFA had like 6 employees at the home office, all wearing like 7 hats each. And it's actually, I'd even use the word shocking how many people they are hiring that have deep industry experience. And I bet we have every firm covered in the industry. I mean, there's people from Fidelity and BlackRock and LPL and Raymond James and Edward Jones. I mean, you name it. I'm leaving a bunch out, but just all over the industry, people that had real roles and management and executives. And so what we're building out is something that is, I think, going to be truly exceptional. But frankly, the task was so big. I mean, we have 30 years plus of legacy technology, archaic systems, all sorts of products that we have to still service and operate as a company. And one thing that a perspective I want to share with you guys that really makes sense to me, and hopefully it'll make sense to you, is that a lot of what's happening is behind the scenes right now. So I would tell you, like, this new executive team has been here for about a year. The longest tenured, probably 15, 16 months. And we have some people that they're on their first month, and I'm meeting them in Hawaii. So let's call it 8 to 12 months is the average tenure. And you guys, they had a massive lift to try to really revitalize this platform. And I would give you the example of like putting money into your house. You guys, if you put $5,000 or $10,000 into landscaping, it makes an immediate impact, right? It's like, wow, like it's a total transformation. It's curb appeal. You can see where your money went. You put $10,000 into repairing some cracks in your foundation, and your house doesn't look any different. It doesn't feel any different. You're kind of like, well, where did all the money go? Where did all that time go? But it was important and necessary to do if that house is going to be robust over time. And I would tell you, an inordinate amount of time and money is going into repairing cracks in our foundation. And I'll just give you an example. You guys have noticed how, like, every once in a while, like, our email doesn't work, or my WFG is down for half a day, or this report isn't working. Well, what's it? So my immediate impression on that, candidly, is like, man, we can't even have a website that works right. Like, what kind of Mickey Mouse operation is this? Well, the reality is they're just putting huge amounts of money into essentially modernizing the infrastructure of our platform. Everything's moving to the cloud. It's all going on Amazon Web Services. Microsoft's a huge vendor. All these big mega cap tech companies you hear about, we've got huge contracts with all of them. And so, to give you just one example, like my WFG, the way, and I'm not a tech guy, but the way it was hosted and all that was just not sustainable for growth and where the world's going. And so they spent months testing, transitioning it to Amazon and the cloud and all this. And just something slipped through the cracks, and that's why the website goes down or email goes down for a couple of days as they're making all these transitions. And so it can be a frustrating process from the field. And some of the guys I know well at the home office, I mean, they're triaging stuff, and it's a painful process, but ultimately it's what we need. And so the same thing's happening with building out Fidelity, which we'll touch on. Some guys from Fidelity were out there. I had dinner with our head of our advisory one night, John Phonash, who I talk to all the time. And I'm starting to I'm still getting my arms around Fidelity, you guys. Like every time I talk with John, he's got 20 years with Fidelity as in his career. So he knows that platform inside and out. In fact, at some point I will probably have him come on and do a training just with our team, because he knows that platform better than anybody. But the reality is, Fidelity platform is this. What Fidelity's built is a platform that every firm out there can customize to what it likes. How they want to price it, what strategies they want to use, how they want the tech to operate. It's a really customizable platform. And so, with that, it just takes a long time to program it the right way, to get everything to talk together. But ultimately, when this is all done, and I don't know when it's going to be done. I mean, the FMAX piece is largely done at this point, which is one aspect of it. But when we're totally done with this, it will be a dashboard that you operate your entire business from. You're going to log into Fidelity, and every mutual fund, every variable annuity, potentially VUL, certainly all your advisory stuff, all of this is going to sync together into one experience, one statement for your clients, one portal that you're on all day long. And something that looks like that it takes years and years of development and programming and building, and it takes millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I just love that we're in a firm that has those kind of resources, and we start now have the right people that are putting those resources to use. And so, let me tell you something. And I don't ever remember a Hawaii trip where I was talking with some guys after the company meeting. I don't think a single thing was announced. Like usually they're always announcing some sort of new contest or new update or new enhancement to this, or I mean, there just wasn't a single thing announced, which on one hand is kind of, I don't know if deflating is the right word. It's always kind of fun to get an update or get an advance notice of something. But all of the time and money is going into infrastructure, which is what we need to really become the preeminent platform in the whole industry, which I think in some ways we already are. But we've got to have this infrastructure in place for us to scale at the level that they want to scale. And so I just have a lot of confidence coming from that, and I wanted to share that with you guys a little bit, from that standpoint. But I do want to talk to you about the trip for a sec, and I just want to make one point, you guys. And I was gonna post this to the group, and then I figured it would be more effective, hopefully, in a live conversation with you guys. And before I say the comment I'm gonna say, I hope you take it with a grain of salt. Like I hope it doesn't offend you at all. I hope you don't take it as grandstanding. But I also, on some level, kind of for some of you, hope it does get under your skin a little bit. Because I'm talking to some of you that have been with us over 10 years in business, and a couple of you guys that have been here less than the first in a year. So you're all in different spots. You're all on different steps of your journey. But I just kind of had the same thought in my head the whole time, almost from the first day of the trip, which is if you knew what it felt like to be in the top 1%, you would hustle so much more. You'd have such a bigger sense of urgency. And I really think that's true. I think a lot of times if you don't know what something feels like, it's hard for you to say, well, it's probably not that great, or well, I don't know. Like, I got it pretty good over here. And we rationalize and justify things. And I just want to tell you guys, just to be direct with you, and I think you guys know some of this, but guys, I'm in the top 1% in any category you can imagine. I'm in the top 1% of income earners in the US. I'm in the top 1% of advisors in the industry by any measurable category. I'm well inside the top 1% in the company. In fact, if you want to make Hawaii, just to give you some easy math, we have almost 80,000 agents and 500 people to go to Hawaii. So that's like way less than 1% of the company goes to Hawaii every year. And, of course, I qualify pretty high in that. And so you guys, there's just a huge separation, I mean, it's just everything is different. And there's an experience level that you can't replicate anywhere else. I've taken Leah all over the Caribbean and our kids on half of those trips, and we've done some really cool stuff, but nothing replicates the idea of that layer of appreciation and reward and knowing you qualified for something. I mean, I probably every dinner we had was a $200 to $250 a head dinner, a $400 round of golf, and I mean the gifts they hand you, and I mean it's probably a $7,000 to $8,000, a $700 a night hotel they put you up in. They fly you out there. I mean, it's probably a $7,000 to $8,000 reward that the company spends to send you to Hawaii. And because I just can't tell you how incredible that is. And so one of my fervent dreams, I mean, it just is to get more of you guys out there so you can experience it. Because I spent some time with some first timers and some people came up and introduced their people to me. And I mean, there's just a look in the eye of just amazement on first timers. They just can't believe it. They just can't believe how amazing it is to be treated like that. And I put a video on Facebook. I think most of you saw it. That I think really encapsulated. I was a little proud of myself. I actually did that thing in one take and put it out. And I centered it most of this on this idea of appreciation. And I've gotten some comments from it, but somebody sent me a message. That's actually a wife of I mean, she's a great friend of ours. And I'm just going to read this. Your video was great. I'm going to show, I'll leave the name out for now, husband when he gets home. He's so stuck in his career as a math teacher. He's training in data analysis so he can transition to that after retirement, but will go sooner if he can make the shift financially. And she goes on to give me like all of his qualifications. And then she says, I'm going to show this video when he gets home tonight. Maybe educating in finances is something for him to look into. Question mark, question mark. So I hope I go recruit this guy and many more. But you guys, I'm looking for people that are looking for us. I'm looking for people, and yours should be looking for people that are dissatisfied, underemployed, underappreciated, and they're everywhere. Now, if I have 10 people or 50 or 100 people that are underappreciated, most of them just want to complain about everything, right? They're not willing to do something about it. So we got to start with the pool of people that are underappreciated, but then our process of presenting to them and taking them through our fast start process and seeing what they're willing to do, that will separate the ones that want to do something about it from the ones that don't. And then that next tier, you guys, is this idea of, okay, now you're here, and all you guys, so this is you guys. You guys are here, right? You're committed. I think every single one of you are in Dallas. In fact, I know you were. You're committed to the business, okay? But if you're honest with yourself, what is that level of commitment? Because I'll tell you, and I've said this before, there are and the Hawaii trip is a great example. There are two kinds of people in this company, fundamentally. There are people that think Hawaii is for them, and there are people that think that Hawaii is for other people. Everybody in the company, from somebody that joined the company last week to our longest tenured person, fits into one of those two categories. And I'll make up a number. I bet there's a couple of thousand people that think Hawaii's for them. And maybe there's probably a couple thousand people in our company right now that have qualified for Hawaii at least once. They stood us up in the room. So there's 250 people in the company meeting room, and they always do stand up if this is your first trip. And there's always, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 people. I bet I'm making some numbers up, but I bet 20 to 35 or 40% of the room's always first timers. Okay. Which should tell you something. If we're bringing new people every trip, that fundamentally means there's a huge number of people that qualify once and don't qualify the next year. or they go, I was one of those guys. I qualified in 2005. I didn't make it back for 9 years. And then once I qualified, I've never missed it, right? So then they asked, then okay, and it's kind of like the wedding dance kind of deal, right? Where it's like, okay, stand up if you've been here for 5 years. Okay, remain standing if you've been here for 10 years and 20 years. Because I was in the 10-year category. It was actually our 13th year, so I didn't make the 15 yet. I'm telling you, in 250 people in the room, I was one of probably 20 people standing that have been there more than 10 years. And I don't tell that to brag. I tell you that there's a separation between like making something once, doing something great every once in a while, or repeatedly doing something great. And I would tell you, and I'm going to talk about this here in great detail in a sec, but having a business model that creates consistency is massive. If I could give you a statement here that I'd encourage you to write down, or maybe it's a question. How can you build a business that produces consistent results, but it's composed of inconsistent people? You guys, people are inconsistent. Okay. So I'm inconsistent personally in areas. I'm never like hitting on all cylinders in all areas of my life, right? You guys are all inconsistent, and work schedules and family, and you take a trip, and, sometimes you're more motivated than others. My clients are super inconsistent, right? Sometimes I can get a hold of them, sometimes I can't. Sometimes prospects say yes, sometimes they don't. But when you aggregate all that together, my business produces remarkably, almost crazy the level of consistent cash flow it spits out, consistent production. And that's largely because of incorporating recurring income into a massive scale. I had our John Fonash, our head of advisory. He spent his whole career in the industry. We're having dinner at my all-time favorite restaurant on the planet. It's this place called Lava Lava Beach Club. In fact, this picture of me and my kids is like 100 steps away from the restaurant on that same beach. It's just, if I had one dinner for the rest of my life, it's not the fanciest dinner in the world, but if I had one dinner for the rest of my life, it would be on that beach at that restaurant. It's just a magical place. And he and I and our kids and our wives are having dinner. And he just looked at me. He's like, Tyson, I can't understand why more people don't build recurring income on our platform. We had a whole big conversation about why that is. But it fundamentally gets down to this idea of people are chasing immediate gratification. And that's the poison pill in everything in life, right? And so I want you guys to start thinking about this stuff. I'm inviting you to think about something as we transition here, because I'm going to talk about our compensation here for a bit in a way I haven't done with you guys in a while. But I'm inviting you to start entertaining the idea, is this for me? Not is this business for me, but is what would it be like for me to qualify for Hawaii? For me to get that email and the link to register for this and register for that. What would it be like for me to play a $400 round of golf on the ocean and then like have the host like thank you for taking the time to play golf with him out in Hawaii? Like what I want you to think about. Don't laugh. Don't dismiss it. I want you to think about that because for some of you, you may not get there this contest, right? I'll give you, guys, for me, when I was rebuilding my business from scratch in 2010, I will tell you Hawaii wasn't the first thing on my mind. Like surviving and paying our bills was the first thing on my mind. But by year two to into year three, all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm not that far away. And we're grinding with kids. We then had Ethan in 2012. So now we got three babies at home. And I'm like, man, all of a sudden, like, it'd be pretty freaking amazing to take Leah to Hawaii. I started working that into my plan. And I will tell you something, you guys. I'm going to give you an example here that I've asked myself this question, and I hope this means something to you. I've asked myself this question many times in my life. What separates me? As humbly as I can tell you that, right? What separates me from so many that play this at such a lower level or quit along the way? And I will tell you the only thing I come up with, because I it doesn't make sense to me objectively. I've recruited many people and I know many people that are way better. They're extroverted. They'll talk to more people. They know more people. They're better at this. They're better at that. I'm by any measurable standard a terrible recruiter. I'm an average leader at best, right? I've got a couple skills in closing and relationships, but really like to me that doesn't add up to like the success I've had. But I'll tell you the main thing that separates me. is I've had a crystal clear vision of the life I wanted to have. And then I made that a standard in my life that I was unwilling to compromise. You're not going to take anything away from me that I want to claim in my life if it's important and necessary. And I will tell you guys, my life is far from perfect. And I think almost all of you know some of what I'm talking about. But the reality is, if you look at my life today, it resembles my dreams. It does. I mean, the travel, the trips we take, the freedom I have with my time, the abundance of income, the home we live in, the wife that doesn't have to work. Like I can go on and on and on and on and on. But it matches the clarity I had of what I wanted in my life. And let me give you a great example of that. I'm having dinner one night with the president of Prudential, and she was our host, and her name was Jill something. She was super nice, and she came off initially like really fun, but then like as we're it was like a 3.5 hour dinner. It's at a notoriously slow restaurant on the beach out there, and anyways, so we had like a lot of time to talk. And eventually I asked her a question. She's right across from me. I'm like, Jill, I'm willing to bet that nobody gets to your position. She's probably like mid 50s. I'm like, I'm willing to bet nobody gets your position without being kind of a ball buster. I think I was a few cocktails in. And she kind of smirked a little bit and she's like, yeah, that's pretty true. It can be cutthroat. And somewhere in that conversation, she said something to me that I thought was really fascinating. Because like we were talking about this whole work from home, and I don't know if have you any of you guys seen the Jamie Dimon clip about like what he thinks about work from home? Have you anybody seen that? All right, so Google that. It's an entertaining watch. He basically says, if you work for JP Morgan, I expect you to be here 60 to 70 hours a week, and if you don't want to do that, I respect that, but you're not going to work here. That's like a short version of it. Um, and so she's talking about she was talking about this one person that's a direct report to her, and she's like, her calendar has her busy every single day from 3:30 to 4:30. And I eventually call her and I say, whatever her name was, Cindy, you can't possibly have a meeting every single day at 3:30. Like, what's going on? Because Jill could never get a hold of her. And she's like, well, I love to see my kids get home off the bus and spend a little time with them, find out how their day was, kind of get them situated, and then I can get back to work and kind of wrap up for the day. And Jill goes, I appreciate that you want to see your kids, but that doesn't work for us. You need to be available from 3:30 to 4:30. You can see your kids in the evening. I mean, I'm paraphrasing as direct as I can. And you guys, you know what I want to say about that? I don't even think that's wrong. I just if I were paying somebody six figures plus probably to move the needle on some area of business, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect them to be available at 3:30 in the afternoon. I don't. That's just not a job for me, right? There are a lot of people out there that will willingly give up a big part of their freedom in exchange for a semi-comfortable life. Now, I can't imagine trying to live on 200 grand a year or whatever that lady's probably making, but there's a lot of people that would gladly sign up for that. Okay? And I just want to bring that up as an example of an involvement I've made in my life where I used to like rail against like corporate America is terrible and employment is like slavery and all. I was too kind of adversarial about it, and I think I lost some connection with people over that. And I just think you got to find people that are hungry for something different. Because for me, I mean, there's a few afternoons a week, literally at 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm on a tennis court hitting with one of my kids, or I'm helping driving kids around, all that kind of stuff, because that's important to me. But I've paid the freaking price to be in a position where I've got the freedom to do that, right? So I'm trying to give you an example of the more clear you are on the life you want to have, because it separates, this example is actually pretty deep if you get into it. There's a lot of people that take the flexibility, but they're struggling to pay their bills and they're frustrated and they're in a dead end job, right? So they convince themselves, like, well, I'm not making the money I want to have, and I don't really have a plan for retirement. We got a bunch of debts I'd love to get paid off, but I can't. But at least I can see my kid at 4 in the afternoon, or at least I'm there at his practices or her dance or whatever it is. Why not have both? Like, why not have both? Why not go build something that gives you an abundance of money and an abundance of time? So I think sometimes we're getting stuck in this mentality of maybe I can find a client case and I'll make a commission. Maybe I can get a meeting going. And we are we're taking our platform and we're minimizing it to something much, much smaller than it was built to be. You guys, you have a Ferrari here, and we're handing you the keys, but you got to get into it and drive it. Okay. And so that's what our platform is. And so as I transition to something, I want to get a little deep into something that hopefully will give you guys a vision of where you can go with something. Because let me tell you about two things I love about our platform. I love that simultaneously we are the most robust, full service, fully licensed platform in financial services that will bring people on part time. Like that's a definitive factual statement. There is nowhere else in the industry that you can join and you can have the full repertoire of resources we have, and do it part-time and stay there as long as you choose to stay there. Now, I'm not advocating you stay there for 10 years part-time. I'm just saying there's no forcing event where, you can do this for 6 months part-time, but then you got to make a decision because there's a lot of those kind of operations out there. Okay. And that's incredible, you guys. Don't overlook that autonomy, of how important that is. And then on the other side of the equation, there is no platform in financial services that will pay you as much as our company will pay you. And I'm going to prove that to you in a second, a way I've never shown you guys. But the reality is there's a whole ground in between of what level you want to play at, right? And so I want to show you guys something and get deep into something that I really haven't done. Let me let's see here. All right. So I want to talk to you about a way that our company has evolved in the last let's see here. In the last really 5 to 10 years. Um I need to relog in here. I'm still logged in. All right. So I want to show you guys my WFG here. Give me one sec. All right, you guys should be seeing my WFG dashboard here. So one day, you guys too might get an $86 paycheck if you grind. Luckily, that's one of 18 checks I get this month. So I want to share something with you guys, and I want to go in depth on something that none of you currently qualify for, but all of you could dip into within the next 12 months. And I mean that, the next 12 months. So when I joined our company, fundamentally, our business model was this idea of, you can it's taking financial services but incorporating team building onto it, right? So the big pitch when I joined our company, and this is 25 years ago, so recurring income didn't really exist, advisory didn't exist really in the industry outside of some small isolated pockets, but mainstream advisory didn't exist. This idea of building trails and recurring revenue, it didn't exist. So the idea of building something that provided passive income, the big pitch was you got to go build this massive team. So let's call that a hierarchical system. Like you got to build a team that built a team that built a team. And eventually, like if you're Bryce Peterson or Bill Mitchell, you've got this huge income that isn't contingent on your daily efforts. That's what I bought into, right? But where we've shifted massively, and I'll tell you, I've had a meaningful role in some of this shift the last 5 years, is that there are now two paths that you can simultaneously participate in that make our company unique in a level that you can't go anywhere else and replicate. Okay. So the hierarchical system is still here and will always be here. And that's critical because that means that as you guys become SMDs, you can get the same contract that I have. And I don't take a pay cut and you get a pay raise. And then you promote an SMD and they get the same contract. I still don't take a pay cut. You don't take a pay cut. They get a pay raise. And we can keep that going. So we could spend more time on that and the genius of that system through 6 generations. But one thing that's evolved is we used to have these bonus pools, you guys, years and years and years ago that were like tiny. I mean, if I could give an example, like without even trying to build any trails, 9 years into our business, just on VUL trails and variable annuity, I had like $1,500 a month of renewals and trails that was is baking. But I mean, it was always like crumbs on a commission statement. and then they started doing these bonus pools as a way to just juice our system up a little bit. And if you were a big leader, it was a couple $100 here. Maybe for the biggest leaders, it was a couple grand here or there. But they weren't organized the right way. They weren't targeted. And these things have gone through massive iterations. But we've gone through two big updates in the last 3 years. And I just want to give you guys like a marker in time. So 3 years ago, we were at the same hotel, same island as I just came back from, the Big Island. And that was the trip where like massive meetings and negotiations were happening to like make a huge change to our TFA pools. And it eventually got done, but it took like 6 more months after that trip. So that first kind of kind of pool, if you will, was really born. And so I want you guys to jot this down. I currently don't have a brochure to show you, but I'm going to give you guys some real numbers, and marketing's working on. I'm involved in the project on actually building out brochures and marketing, getting this up on our website so people understand this. Because almost nobody in our company understands how these pools work because we don't have them published very well. But I want you to just to write this number down. 9.5% of every dollar of securities production that comes to our company goes into our pools. So out of every dollar, 9.5% goes in the pools. Okay. And I'm going to give you some real numbers here. So there's four pools that they go into. So about $300,000 goes into our base shop securities pool. Okay. About 250,000, of course, every month's a little different, goes into our super base securities pool. About 250,000 goes into our super team securities pool. Okay. So right there, and we do as a firm far more securities than advisory. So securities are variable annuities, VULs are the two biggies. I mean, variable annuities, the huge one. Mutual funds, all that stuff. That's all securities. Okay. Advisory is our Betterment, Trans One, and now Fidelity. It's and a few other things, but it's basically, a fee for service model. There's about 120,000 that goes into the advisory pool. Okay. So, smaller dollar revenue. Okay. So right now, if we just add all that up, that's like close to $1 million a month that goes into these pools. So what I want you guys to understand about the beauty of these pools is that this is the ultimate profit sharing program in the industry. Nobody else has this. Okay. So what this means is whether you joined our company 25 years ago, like I did, or you joined us this year, you have the same opportunity to dip into the same pools of company revenue. Meaning, I've got advisory accounts that have been on the books for 10 plus years that are paying fees every month. And Joe Kaiser, do you realize you could override me? If you become an SMD and get in this pool, you actually get, because guess what? 9.5% of every securities revenue dollar that I produce goes into these pools too. In other words, so everybody that gets into these pools, you get to override everybody else in the company. I mean, there's nothing like this even remotely in the industry. It's transformed my business, and it's been a major focus for me the last couple of years to get these modified and enhanced. So let me give you an example of the change that was made 2.5 years ago. So before 2.5 years ago, I'll give you guys some rough numbers. We had an advisory pool and we had a base shop securities pool. The base shop securities pool would pay me, I'm going to ballpark it, 1 or 2 grand a month. Maybe a big month was 2,500, but it was somewhere in that range. Okay. It was great. It definitely like added to my income, and it's been so long. I mean, I might even be estimating high. I bet it was less than 2,000 a month on average. But then the advisory pool, literally my checks would be like $300 or $400 a month. And I'd take it. Like, I'm not going to complain. But it wasn't moving the needle. And basically, we didn't have enough money going into the pool. It was spread around too thin. I don't want to get lost in the weeds there. But one of the big changes that was made 3 years ago is instead of if you go back to the notes, hopefully you wrote down, notice that on securities, there's a base, super base, and super team pool. Okay. And we can put a marker on that and come back to that. And on advisory, they take the full 9.5% of advisory, and all of that goes in the base pool. In other words, they wanted to move the needle on the people actually producing accounts, and that's SMDs. So SMDs catch all of our top personal producers. It also catches our most, profitable and robust base shops that are promoting producers that are actually doing advisory. So they wanted to pull all of that money into one pool. So that was the first thing that enhanced the check. And so if that's the only change they made, then what happens is maybe my check goes from $300 or $400 to maybe it goes to $1,000 or $1,200 because now all of that money is going in that pool. But then we tiered it, okay? And I should have written this down and had something I can show you guys. But there's four tiers in the pool, and we started this 3 years ago, but it just got modified here this past month, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the way these tiers work, you guys, is you have to do at least 50. So you have to be an SMD, okay? And just fundamentally, that's core to our business, right? Because if you think of a major law firm, we think when you become an SMD, you become a partner with our firm. Okay, that's your partnership contract. I've been calling it that forever. But if you're in a law firm or a big CPA firm and you want to get a bonus payout at the end of the year, well, the partners get those payouts. The senior assistants and the staff accountants and those kind of people, they get salaries, but they're not going to get a partnership payout. A partnership payout is literally a part owner of that firm. You've got shares in that firm. I would argue I have the exact same thing as an SMD with Transamerica and TFA. Okay, so you got to become an SMD, which we'll talk about at the end. But the second thing is you have to do at least $50,000 a year as in advisory production to get into the advisory pool. Okay. So here's something I'll tell you. Some of you guys might know this, but Alec, you're already over 50,000. You're just not an SMD. Ryan Wagner, you're way over 50,000, just not an SMD. Okay. So the reality is step one is become SMD. Step two is make sure you're over 50,000. So there's four tiers. So I'm gonna give you some real easy math. If $120,000 goes into the pool, it splits up into four buckets: tier one, tier two, tier three, tier four. So the beauty of the tiers is if we split the 150,000, so let me show you guys a number here. If I go to the TFA Leaders Bulletin, and all of you guys can run the exact same reports I'm going to show you. All right. I think when I do a screen share, this thing always seems to run slower. So if I go to TFA Leaders Bulletin, all right, I'm going to go to top 500. And I'm going to set this to advisory and SMD base shop. And then we're going to run a rolling 12 report because all this is always based on your rolling 12 month number every single month. Okay. All right. So some of you guys might not even know this. We're actually the number one base shop in the entire company in advisory, by a pretty big chunk. Now, Jing Ho is coming at me hard. She's actually does a little bit more than us every month. She's got a little different business model. So she'll probably pass me in the next year here. But you can see there's a pretty big drop off here. Okay. So I could expand this, but the top 38 people, basically we have 36 people doing at least 100,000 points. If I go to the next page, it'll go on for there, but it's something like 120, 130 people are over 50,000. All right. So let me go through these numbers with you. And I apologize, I'm doing a lot of this verbally, but hopefully this makes sense. So we have $120,000 that goes into the advisory pool every month. Okay. So $30,000, one fourth or 25% goes into each of the four buckets. So everybody over 50,000, I will go to the next page here. Everybody over 50,000, which we're pretty close. Let's just call it, maybe it's 90 people. Let's see here. Here we go. 86 people are over 50,000. So if you're so 86 people are sharing that $30,000. Okay. So just to make something up, maybe everybody gets $200 or $300, $400, something like that, whatever that math is. Okay. Um, and that first tier is 50,000 to 150,000. So everybody that's doing at least 50,000 gets in that pool. And let's go back to the second page here. And so all these people are between 50 and 150. So everybody's getting a few $100 if you're in that first tier. So Alec and Ryan, like virtually the month you get promoted to SMD, the very next month you're going to be in that advisory pool. Now there's one exception to that. You have to have at least 150,000 total securities points, okay, to get into either pool. So not to get lost in the weeds, but if you have like, 80,000 of securities points and 70,000 advisory points, you're actually in both pools. If you have 120,000 advisory but no securities, well, you're not going to be in either pool because you got to have at least 150. So it's a little, they want to have some balance, some balance there. And these things are always big compromises getting these deals done. But essentially, let's put that aside for a minute and just keep it simpler. So if you're over 150 though, so now we got 21 people over 150. So now 21 people are going to split the $30,000 in bucket number two. Does that make sense? So each of those people might be getting $1,000 or $2,000, right? Depending on how where they're at in there. And then the next bucket is 250,000 to 350,000. And I'm sorry, I messed it up. It's 50 to 100, and then it's 100 to 200, 200 to 300, and 300 and above. So everybody over 100,000, so 36 people from 100,000 to 200,000 get into bucket two. Okay. And then we have 13 people over 200,000. So now in that next bucket of 30,000, you got 13 people splitting that up. Checks are getting bigger. And then the final bucket is over 300,000. So there's five of us in that bucket. So five of us are splitting $30,000, right? And I'm getting the biggest share because I've got the biggest production. So if you look to what that translates to, I'm going to pull up my commission statement here. And last month is the first month of this updated system. So I'm going to go back here, TFA on the 20th. And what these look like when they come through is you get this adjustment down here. So normally adjustments like, $50 because you had to credit against a fee you paid or something like that. But here's a little $22,000 adjustment I got. Guys, this is profit sharing right here. Okay. So I barely dip into the super base pool because I've got David Wynn as a direct SMD to me. I'm gonna come back to this base shop pool in a minute, but check out this advisory pool check. We can't spell January right, apparently. I just noticed that. Well, somebody fat fingered that key. But you guys, I'm gonna give you these two numbers now to connect two dots. $120,000 goes in the advisory pool, and I get 19,000 of it myself. Now, is that insane? Now that's an anomaly. That's not going to last forever because what's going to happen is more people are going to grow and figure out how lucrative this is. And more people are going to get into the next tier and the next year. It's a bit of an anomaly because there's so few people in those top two tiers. But you guys, that is profit sharing that is like out of control, right? And I was talking to a guy named Sean Patrick, some of you know, and I had dinner with him one night. I'm like, hey, did you like your bonus check this month? He's like, yeah, it was up like 3 or 4 grand. He's like, what happened? And I told him about some changes. He's like, wow, no way. That's incredible. He didn't even know about the change. So another change we've made is the base shop pool now works exactly the same as what I just described in advisory. Now, there's currently not a report I can run that nets it out and shows you where you rank in that. They're working on that report as we speak. But essentially, my advisory production or my base shop securities production, so we were like 528,000 here. We're like 330,000 on this. So I'm doing less securities production as a base shop, but there's a lot more people doing huge securities production. I mean, there's guys doing 600, 800 a million point securities based shops. So there's guys getting 8, 10, $12,000 checks in this pool. Um, and you can see mine's 2,700. So there's a lot of room to grow there. But you guys, this is really exciting stuff. And why this is so important and why I want to take some time on this and show you guys is because I want you to understand what you're working towards. This isn't the only path here, isn't just building a massive team of representatives, okay? The secondary path simultaneously, because it's not an either or thing, is that as you start building your assets under management and you start getting into these pools, you're going to start having a higher payout. Because if I do the math, you guys, on what a $19,000 check is relative to my production, if you do all that math, I'm getting paid 100% of the advisory revenue I generate. So, in other words, there's no firm I could go to in America where they're going to pay me 100% of my production. The top contract you're going to get anywhere if you're a sole producer is 90%, right? So you can actually make more on your personal business here before you have one teammate, one recruit, one anything because of our profit sharing pools than you can anywhere else in the industry. And that is a transformational design. And that is not by accident. And so what's happening right now is a lot of things are aligning. You guys, the stars are aligning where we have resources that we've never had. I think I gave you guys the number. It's something like I forget the number I told you now. It was like wasn't it like 140 million or 138 million that's like invested into Transamerica or TFA WFG the next 5 years. We have money that we've never had before. We have executive talent coming here that we've never had before. We have the right people in the field, and selfishly, I'm one of them that have serious input on compensation, marketing that's going to be coming, platform design, you name it. And you guys, all these things are coming together to create a platform that we already have something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the industry, but it's going to be even cooler in the next 3 to 5 years as we keep innovating this thing. So at what level do you want to play at here? Because I want to encourage you guys that some of what you're building already, as you're building your way to SMD and getting to and get, is to get into these pools. Because I want to put you in a position where the minute you become SMD, so Ryan Wagner, I'm seeing, I want the minute Ryan Wagner's in SMD, I want that to be like a transformative leap in his income and lifestyle. I want that to feel like I was talking to a buddy of mine that he's a big partner at a big law firm in Toledo, and he was telling me the story of when he became a partner and his wife, he literally him and his wife flew to Vegas and like just totally went nuts for like a long weekend, like just spent money like crazy and just celebrated because it was like he's like the rest of my life is now set because I'm a partner, right? I want you to feel like that's what the SMD contract is. It's that big of a deal if you do it the right way. We have a lot of SMBs in our company that make virtually no money here because they did something one time, hit a contest, crossed a finish line, but didn't actually build anything. And so they're largely in business by themselves. So the big move here, if you want to make a six-figure to multiple six-figure income, if you want to start qualifying for Hawaii, I mean, I get the same reaction every time in Hawaii when I'm having dinner with people and I'm like, yeah, I've already qualified for next year. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, actually, I qualified for the year after that and year after that. I don't even know which island we're going to be at, but I've already qualified for it. And they're like, no way. Like, and it's just like this like mind melting experience for people that are already qualified, but they know how much they had to hustle to qualify that year, and they're starting over again with commissions and sales and get recruits going. And guys, I didn't want to spend my life on that treadmill. And so then, and most of these guys aren't even in these pools, you guys. And I'll give you a number. I'm pretty close to being accurate here without pulling up the email. There's about 340 EMDs in our company. I get an email report. It changes by a couple every month, but I get a report every month on where I rank on every category you can imagine. Net point ratio, recruits that get licensed, production per recruit, all this stuff, right? And they also tell you what your cash flow rank is. You guys want to venture a guess out of 340 where my cash flow ranks? I'm currently the number 8 earning EMD in the entire freaking company, which includes all of WFG. So all the super builders out there, all the massive teams and the massive hierarchies, right? And I'll tell you something that Brian Loaiza would tell you if he was on this call. We want to make this platform, and I would tell you it's done. We have made it with these pools a platform that if you have 3 to 5 guys on your team, you're better off here than anywhere else in the industry. We are not trying to be the platform where you're better off as a sole producer. I don't want that for you guys. It's great. I'd rather be a sole financial advisor than virtually any other occupation out there, but I want something more for you guys. I want you guys to experience what it's like to have a team, have some running mates, have some people that are chasing the same thing with you, um, and then give them an opportunity for a and multiple six-figure income. But you know what I don't have that I desperately want, and I mean this is the most sincere thing I'm going to tell you guys. What I currently don't have that I desperately want is I want to be in Hawaii with teammates, right? Because I see some of the bigger teams out there having, 6, 8, 10 couples around a dinner table, and just having the time of their life in Hawaii. And I desperately want that. I want that for you guys, and I selfishly want that experience for me because I can't think of something cooler because that's the final element that doesn't exist. So you have this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before we transition. You have this extraordinary, trip. I mean, it's an exotic location, it's first class, it's all this stuff. And then you have the appreciation and recognition on top of that. And then you have the camaraderie with other colleagues and some of our greatest friends that we see, and our kids are hanging out. I mean, we drive up to the top of Mauna Kea with Guillermo Malord and his kids. Actually, a quick funny story that's worth sharing. So it's a 9,000 foot summit. It's the number one place on the entire planet to view the stars because it's super dark. There's no light pollution and all this. And anyways, we drive up there, guys. I'm telling you, I've never done it before all these years. I'm telling you, you feel like you're driving on the moon. Like it's a weird experience up there. And the temperature drops 25, 30 degrees. And we get up there we rented a minivan and you guys like the amount of gas that I burned in that minivan driving up 9,000 feet, like it cost me like a quarter tank of gas. So we get up there and we're hanging out with our boys and we're watching the stars and you can see 7 planets. It was outrageous. Okay. So camaraderie is incredible. But I tell Guillermo, I'm like, man, did you see how much gas you burned on the way up? And he's like, no, I didn't pay attention. Well, we get in our cars to go down the mountain. He calls, my phone rings. He's like, my car says I got 28 miles left of gas. And we're like 45 miles to 50 miles from like the nearest gas station anywhere in civilization. And so I'm like, well, buddy, you better put it neutral and get as much momentum as you can. And so we got him all the way down. He had 9 miles to spare on his gas tank when we got him to the nearest gas station. So it's kind of a funny thing. So you have the camaraderie, right? But the final element, the final magic piece is this idea of our team being there. And you guys I just want you to think about this. We experienced that in Alaska, and that was tremendous. It was tremendous. But what we didn't have in Alaska is we didn't have the element of, at least for that specific trip, you have qualified for it because we just kind of did more of a loyalty kind of relationship qualification, which meant a lot to me, by the way. But future trips, what we'll do as a team will look a little different. And we also didn't have any providers there hosting us, paying for stuff, appreciating us. So it's like, I'm just telling you guys, nobody thinks like this. Like, because what I'm describing to you literally doesn't exist anywhere. I was talking to one of our providers, Scott Mangold from Prudential yesterday, and I was referencing the Prudential person I had dinner with, and we're talking, and he's like, man, I can't believe that trip they take you guys on. He's like, do you know like the top trip at LPL is like 3 nights in Marco Island, Florida? Like you guys, nobody else does trips like WFG does. I will tell you there's some things that we need to shore up as a company, and I kind of spent the early part of this training talking about that. But there's some things that nobody else does. Nobody else does trips and rewards and recognition like we do. Nobody includes spouses like we do, right? In fact, there's one event I go to every year, which is the TFA Summit that they just launched last year. It's like the top 30 TFA reps, and spouses are not invited to that. And Leah's like, why is that? I don't And I'm like, that only feels weird to you because you're invited to everything else. But most wives of financial professionals, they won't attend with their husband, or husband won't attend with their wife, anything anywhere for 30 years. And the reason TFA, there's some regulatory issues with that because we get deep into securities and all that. So anybody that's not licensed can't come. But outside of that, you guys, we open it up to everybody. And you guys, there's a culture here that I just could never walk away from. I just love being part of this company. I love growing with it. But I just want you guys to know you've got a ticket to the major leagues. You've got a pathway to go from, you know, like junior college softball to AAA and then to AA and then to single A, or I did that backwards, single A to AAA, all the way to the big leagues. You've got a path, but you've got to carve your path. And so I'm going to end this transition, or this talk, with where I started. If you knew what it felt like to be in the top 1%, you would hustle so much harder, because I wanted to get to a point where I could spend the rest of my life in the way that I wanted to spend it, with the people I want to spend it with the experiences, with the relief of financial pressure and stress. And to give you just a last idea, so a ton of us were on the same flight home, and so we're all hanging out. It's essentially an outdoor airport in Kona, and we're all hanging out for an hour there before we board the plane. And Bryce Peterson was there. I was talking with him some, and it was Bryce's 47th trip. Now, Bryce, I don't know his exact age, but he's either like 67 or 68. He's right around there. And we always kind of joke about the same stuff, and we're talking about some stuff, and he's like, I'm not sure I'll make it next year. And he wasn't referring to qualifying, but he basically alluded to the fact he's like, I got some stuff I need to get done. I think, it sounded like, hip replacement, something like that, right? Some medical stuff. But he's getting up there, you guys. I mean, Bryce looks different to me than he did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I'm gonna look different when I'm in my late 60s. And it was just this little subtle reminder to me of how incredibly short this life is. I mean, my God, is it short? And how much of it do you want to spend on your terms versus somebody else's terms? And so we've spent a lot of time in the last couple of months talking about contacting and prospecting and what tools to use and what scripts to use and all of that. And we're going to continue circling back to that again and again and again, because this business is about teaching old things to new people, not new things to old people. So this is a little bit of a new thing for old people today. But I'm not going to have big, huge transformative updates week by week, because we're not changing that much week by week. But this is old things to new people, meaning we got to bring new people onto this call, onto your teams, onto my team, that hear this information for the first time, that can go get us into more markets and all of that. And I will tell you guys, you are closer than you think to SMD, to getting into these pools. And then, by the way, we're building it, getting into Hawaii. Because if in Hawaii, there's some debate in the company, but there used to be 400 qualifiers, and then we moved it to 500 qualifiers, but the company's got so much bigger. It's way harder to qualify for Hawaii than it ever was before. I mean, you used to have to do something like 300 to 350,000 points to qualify for Hawaii, depending on the year. And now it's like 600,000 to qualify in your base shop. So if you're starting at zero and you got to find 50,000 points a month of transactional business, I mean, you better have a whole bunch of people on your team to do that with. But if you start the year with 150, 200, 250,000 points, and then the next year you start with 300,000 points, and the year after that you start with 350,000 points, you guys see what I'm getting at? All of a sudden, getting there is a little bit easier. And then eventually you get to where I'm at, which is, I mean, my personal production, I could promote Ryan and Alec out of my base shop this afternoon, and just on my personal production, assets under management, I still hit the qualification, right? So
You should do it.
yeah. You guys, and I'm gonna put Alec on the spot, and I'm gonna make, you know, I feel like we have a close enough group and we have the right relationships to say this. But Alec has been a little bit in tune with some of these bonus conversations, and he's heard me on some of these calls the last few months getting this stuff done. And at one point he's like, are they going to have some bonus programs for MDs? And do you remember what my response was? I'm like, that's kind of like, are they going to start handing trophies out at the 4 mile mark of the marathon? Like, oh, here's your medal. You get to wear the medal the rest of the way. Like, you already did it. You're already a champion. And I don't say that to put you guys down at one iota, but I hope that challenges you a bit. You guys, trophies and medals and partnership, man, that's for SMDs, right? And so one of many things that's being retooled and updated, but it exists in our on our platform is we have to be a platform that rewards many different business styles from a compensation standpoint. And we do that with these pools. So by the way, do some back to the napkin math. What's $22,000 times 12? That's over $250,000. And then on top of that, you get paid our partnership pool, which is now 2 years old. That's another 50,000 a year at my level. You guys, that's $300,000 a year in profit sharing before I get to $1 of commissions that I earn with the business that I write or have on the books. I mean, now that is a platform. Okay. So we have these rewards here, but we have multiple paths to becoming SMD. So the classical path is 10 licensed agents and 75,000 points over 3 months. Frankly, that's the path I qualified under. And in fact, in my walk uphill 10 miles in the snow both ways to school every day story, it used to be securities licenses and you had to have 90,000 points. But now it's life only licenses and 75,000. That would be my preferred path for you to make it on because I think S&D should be you and a team, not you by yourself with a higher contract. I feel very strongly about that. However, we have alternative guidelines where if you have a certain amount of advisory production and or cash flow and you have lesser licensed agents, I've got to get that pinned down and reaffirm that that's in writing, which is on my list to work on. But it largely exists. But you do something. I'll give you an example. If you do like 100,000 rolling 12 advisory production, Ryan Wagner, you're at like 75,000 rolling 12 advisory production. So when I say a couple of you guys could be here within the next year, Ryan's certainly one of those guys. But I desperately want Ryan to have a few teammates with him that are serious in business once he becomes an SMD, because that's where our platform is built. It's you and 3 to 5 guys. You're better off here than anywhere else, just financially, let alone the camaraderie, the spirit, the mission, the wealth wave marketing, all of these things that we couldn't replicate anywhere else. You guys, we have a magical concoction here. And so I wanted to spend I didn't know if that was going to take 30 minutes or 60 minutes. The only thing I was going to do on FMAX, which we'll save for next time, was I was just going to show you one little thing to get you started. But I would encourage everybody with a securities license, you have FMAX. In fact, I'll show you where you go. You just go to menu and then you go to TFA sales tools. And then you can get right down here to either eMoney or Wealthscape. So let me take 2 minutes and show you guys one thing. We're already over time. Well, for some reason, it's not. I think I timed out on my login. But you go to those, that'll get you into Wealthscape. That'll get you to FMAX. But Wealthscape really is. So when we talk about, this is the one thing I'll cover. When we talk about Fidelity, what we're really talking about is it's the Wealthscape platform. That's the big platform that encompasses everything. Okay. And that's very much still being built out. But one kind of substack under that is FMAX, which is the advisory piece of that. And that's what we're going to dig into. That piece of it is the replacement for Goldman Sachs. Now, Goldman Sachs is going to be around for years and years to come. Eventually, they're going to stop new business being able to be written on that, but we're a ways off from that because they're going to give plenty of time for people to ramp up to FMAX. But I'd encourage you guys to get in there and start fumbling around with some things. There are some training videos on there where you can start watching. They're going to build out a ton of training videos. But we're going to start doing next week with FMAX is I'm going to start showing you, number one, the platform. and all of the different investment strategies on there. And we're going to start getting into running proposals and putting models together. And it's really an entirely different kind of methodology than what Goldman Sachs is. And so that is really all we're going to cover, really probably the next 3 weeks. I think it'll take us 3 weeks to really get into it. And then I might have a guest come on and spend some time with us. And what's cool, you guys, is we also have wholesalers we never had. So there's actually Fidelity wholesalers. So the Fidelity wholesaler that covers our at least my area here, well, he covers all your area because he covers like 10 states, but he lives in Cleveland. So he's like, yeah, you're easy for me to come and stop by. And so we're gonna have a lot of support for this. But I hope what I said to you guys was meaningful today. Because the wins, you guys are on the call. You guys are already at SMD. But to get into these pools, we got to get you. You guys are right on the doorstep, but we got to get over 150,000 of securities points. And for those of you knocking on the door of SMD, I mean, let's go get that done the next year, right? I mean, that shouldn't be a 5-year kind of project. And none of you, and I mean none of you, are more than two, maybe on the very outside, 3 years away from becoming an SMD if you get hustling. Okay. And that's, you guys, that's what this business is about. Like, don't minimize this thing down to some part-time. Maybe I'll make a little bit of extra money. Don't turn this into a side hustle. Guys, I hate that word. I get it, but I would never associate this platform with a side hustle. Don't confuse part-time with a side hustle, right? A side hustle is like, I don't know, you clean a couple houses on the side in the evenings or something. That's a side hustle. You guys, this is a part-time opportunity on the way to a full-time business, and nobody is going to pay you and support you and reward you more than our platform will. And that includes obviously, your leadership here. And so I hope you guys take this message and really think about some things I've shared, and you start thinking about this is for me. And you get with your wife and get with your husband and you figure out, okay, what if we elevated the next level? What if we really, really went for it the next 12 to 18 months? Because if you guys replicated what I did from 2010 just to 2012, just those first 3 years, I will tell you those 3 years, you guys, I wouldn't want to run at that pace forever, but I was desperately trying to save my family from financial ruin. And I was in the field every night of the week. I never really worked a lot on Saturdays and I never worked Sundays. Um, but yes, Monday through Friday, it was balls out. I mean, I was in the office in the morning. I wouldn't come home. I'd get to the office and I just wouldn't come home till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Fridays, usually I was done by 5 or 6, but I was burning it, you guys. I was constantly contacting people, lunches all the time, evening appointments, trying to fit stuff in. And you guys, in that 3 years turned our ship around. And then from 2013 on, I started making Hawaii every year. And that's just every year it's built and it's built and it's built and it's built and it's built. And it just keeps getting better as we go. So I wish that for you guys. I really do. And I hope you take that to heart. So pleasure being in business with all of you. And we'll get on it next week. Have a great day, guys.